60 seconds.
All right, call to order. And let's just go around the circle and see if you're here or not.
Sonia Strong is present.
Okay, Rick Emmelhein's present.
Edie Hughes, present.
Linda Hart present.
Matthew Mitchell present.
All right, we have a quorum, so let's have a meeting. Approval of the minutes. These are from July 16th, 2025, and should have had them in your packet. Is there any questions on any of the minutes? Hi, Rita.
Hello, how are you?
Good, hi Rita.
Hi, Edie, how are you?
Good.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
Hi, Sonia. Saw you the other night.
Yeah.
Here comes Rick. We'll wait until Rick gets seated. Hello. Let the record show that Rick Summerson is here, please. Also on, in terms of attendance, Michael is not going to be here. He got hung up in someplace in Canada waiting for an Air Canada flight. We hope he'll get back tonight. That's our goal. Back to the consideration of minutes from 7:16. Are there any questions about the minutes? Anybody notice anything on them that didn't look right to you?
I did not get the minutes. I looked through all my emails
Oh.
and I didn't receive.
Do you want to, it should have been right following the agenda.
I got
Yeah,
the
mine
with the
was-
agenda.
Sorry.
It's
I
okay.
didn't get it.
You didn't get the agenda?
You didn't get the agenda.
I didn't get the email that usually has the attachments.
Oh,
And I got the one with the weed definitions.
okay.
It came
So I
the
don't know
week
what
before.
happened to it. What's that?
It came the week before.
I know, and I looked through that. I pulled
Okay.
all the emails
Okay.
from you and I didn't get it unless somebody else sent it.
It would have come from, well, AJ sends it through
Oh,
a
AJ.
specific
Okay, I
routing.
didn't look.
Do
I
you
didn't.
want this then? Why don't you take it? I've
If you got an
copy.
extra copy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so, any questions on the minutes? I didn't see anything, they looked fine to me. I think the voting was accurate and everything. Okay, any questions? No questions? Let's, someone want a motion for approval of the minutes?
I motion.
All right.
I second.
Edie, Sonia seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, moving on. Anybody online, AJ?
No.
For public forum, so we will dispense with public forum today. And that goes into our statistics. AJ, take it off. Take it away.
Yes, so it is our first month with our seasonals, so you'll notice statistics are significantly higher for July than they were the previous month. But the numbers do match the 2024 numbers. If you compare it to those with our seasonals, outside of that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, I'm going to say that there was a market jump across the board. Your case total jumped from 708 to 1284. And your warnings jumped from 135 to 883. Those are huge. I mean, is that strictly seasonal?
So a lot of it is last year, we didn't get our seasonals till middle of July, middle end. And that was just due to unexpected staffing changes in June of reallocation of our seasonals. So we ended up having to post later. We had seasonals on board, they got reallocated in June that we were notified, so we didn't end up hiring till the end of June.
Okay.
And then that seasonal staff member ended up staying later, so you'll notice our August, September, October numbers for seasonals were a lot higher last year. So if you take, for example, last year's September numbers compared to July numbers, are fairly comparable.
First page, any questions on first page? So that would explain grass and weeds jump.
Yep.
From 174 to 1603.
Second page?
Where do you get 174?
Let's read that line.
250.
We're at
260.
I'm looking at 2024.
Oh, okay.
Grass and weeds were 174 last year. This year they were 1603.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I had that.
Do you have the other one, the packet?
Oh, okay.
That would not, it wouldn't have been
Wouldn't
included
have
in this.
been,
It would have
okay.
been,
I have it in
Okay.
somewhere in here. Okay. So significant. From 600.
I mean, yeah, we're talking,
500,
we're talking a big jump, yeah.
530.
Second page, the one thing I noticed was the right-of-way.
What is that?
Is that violations of right-of-way? People block walkways and things like that.
Yes, so the right of way would be tied to the grass and weed, except that's for like sidewalk blockage of vegetation or alleys like low hanging trees would be considered right of way violation instead of the grass and weed violation.
And would that also have been seasonal people
Yes.
noticing that? Okay, so that explains that.
What about trash litter? Would that be seasonal people?
No,
Who would be reporting on that?
trash and litter would be the 3 code officers.
The regular,
Yes.
But I'm seeing a drop in both nuisance and parking. We went from 23 last year to 0 this year on nuisance, and 163 in parking down to 7.
So for parking specifically, in all years past, code enforcement has been in charge of parking for 4th of July event. This year, we actually had our 2 traffic parking officers were required to attend 4th of July.
Okay.
So they took over the main parking responsibilities for the 4th. And so that's why our numbers significantly decreased for the parking specifically, because they ended up taking over the duties of parking while we actually ended up patrolling during that event specifically.
That would explain it. And that will explain something later when it comes to Bellevue numbers being so much lower, I would assume.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Warnings issued, again, a big jump. I assume that was also seasonal. Anything else on those pages that you have questions about?
do you think it's coming, do you think it's just seasonal coming from the 2 part-time weed enforcement people? Or is it the regular code enforcement officers that they're seeing things, violations?
For the grass and weed, and specifically grass and weed, I'd say probably 90% of that is our seasonals. The right of way is probably 60% the seasonals. The rest of everything else is strictly the 3 full-time code officers. But the full code officers, they're still doing some of the grass and weed. When there's other violations on the property, we'll tag that on as well onto our notices. So we'll still do some of that as well if there's other violations on a property. The seasonals are just strictly doing properties that don't have other violations or that already have other cases open for violations that didn't initially have grass and weeds on them. They'll add grass and weeds on a separate case for violations that have come since a notice has already been issued.
Do they walk the neighborhoods at all, the code enforcement? Or did they just go out based upon reports like ankle fix, people calling?
The seasonals or code officers?
The code officers.
The code officers, we don't. We don't go walk. Unfortunately, we don't have the time or staffing right now to do that. We're with 3 of us on right now. We're luckily if we can get our reports entered and keep up with calls for that day. I was still entering calls from Friday today.
So these are reports
Yes.
that you get. Where are most of them coming from? Engelfix?
Angle Fix, phone calls, dispatch, other city departments referring cases. They're all over.
Okay, so it's just handling the day-to-day.
Correct.
Okay.
So on the 1603, were they all issued a notice of violation? On the
Yeah.
weeds?
Yes, yeah. All these numbers were actual cases where a notice was actually issued.
And then did they go back to check?
Yes, they're actually on round 2 of re-inspections right now.
But is the notice a violation, they have 10 days to clean it up, or what, how long do they have to clean it?
14.
14?
2 weeks.
So do they, if they're on the second round, do they only wait 2 weeks to start going out, or it's probably a month by the time they get back out to check them?
A lot of the areas, it's about 3 to 4 weeks that they're re-inspecting, unless if it's a very bad property or there's something, if there's another circumstance, that's where the district code officer may pick up and take over the case. Because normally there's gonna be other violations or something where a summons needs to be issued, which the seasonals can't do. So that's where the district code officer will actually take over the case at that point for those very bad properties or true nuisance properties or something that we do need to just get on right away.
Okay,
Those properties will definitely, if we need a follow-up or if there's multiple citizen complaints or something like that, we will get back on certain properties if we need to. But most just general properties, we're about 3 to 4 weeks out on inspections, we just get that extra few weeks
okay.
for complaints.
And they should have it done by the time they get there then, right?
Yes.
Or they'll be taller.
Yep,
Right.
That's what we're seeing with the second round, is it's very, very obvious of properties that have cut and maybe have let it go a little bit long versus properties from the first round that haven't done anything whatsoever in that time frame.
If they get reported a second time, I have a neighbor across the street who, unfortunately, he lives straight across the street from me, so I just stare at his lawn all the time. But I reported him the first time, and I got a notification that it was addressed and he had mowed it, but then it started growing again, and he was like a day ahead of me calling again. If he had been called a second time, then that would have been a violation, a second violation for him, right?
So with the snow ordinance, how it was written, it's the first and final for the administrative order. Grass and weeds, we treat very similarly. However, if we've known they've cut, like in that case that you gave of, hey, my neighbor's weeds, they grew, they cut it, now they're growing back. Well, there's obviously some maintenance that has been done. So that's where we'll go out and we'll give a 72-hour, hey, you've already been posted once we have the case open, you need to get it corrected. And if they cut it within that 72 hours, great, they cut it. But if it's one where nothing's happened, it's like, you've been posted, there's been no attempt for compliance at a property, we can send those straight to abatement. The ones that have at some point, and that's what I said, the second round, we can tell properties that haven't done anything all season versus properties that have cut, maybe they need that nudge again of going, hey, you're overgrown again. We're not out there with a ruler measuring that type of deal. It's the obvious ones that, hey, you're a foot tall again. You need to cut. Here's a 72-hour notice. Okay, you 3 days to cut. That's more than reasonable. You've already been told what the requirements are.
Well, this is a property that has an automatic sprinkler system, so it runs every day.
So it grows very fast.
Exactly. No. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this page? I want to ask on the next page, let's see here. I mean, it's kind of weird. There's certain things that just either dropped like a rock or skyrocketed. So nuisances have gone from 23 to 0. Parking has gone from 163 to 7. I mean, those just seem extreme in a sense. Any thoughts on those? Is there change of staffing or?
So parking is not our primary duty. We back our parking officers. So if you look at the 2 previous months for 2025, we're at 8 and 5. So that's fairly normal numbers. Like I said, the 167 to 7, that 167 number is strictly 4th of July from last year.
Okay,
That's what it is. Normally at 4th of July, we dedicate 2 code officers just for parking enforcement, because we've never had parking work 4th of July in the past. This year, our parking officers were dedicated to work 4th of July, which allowed the code officers to actually patrol the park. That's why we don't have the parking tickets. And that's why that number is so
Okay.
low. Same thing with nuisance. Like I explained, we haven't had the staffing to focus on some of those larger properties, some of the RV nuisances that we have that incorporate the other numbers. For people living in RVs, the RVs that are abandoned on the streets, our parking officers, they're towing those RVs now instead of getting us involved if they're not occupied. So they can post them. Their sergeant over parking has worked with them, so they're actually posting those nuisance postings. If they're unoccupied, they're treated no different than any other abandoned vehicle on the right of way. They're just being towed. If they are occupied, they're coordinating with patrol to get those ticketed, because all we're being involved with in the past is just writing a summons, and then they were still towing them. So that's where on some of those, because we're short-staffed, they've been towing a lot of those because that was something extra that we were helping them and patrol with to limit some of their staffing needs. But now that we're short, they've been taking over some of that. And so some of our extra nuisance stuff, some of those other responsibilities, we're just trying to get through the basics, the life safety with the animal control, those duties with the 3 of us now. Hopefully we'll get into staffing updates here soon. But that's where some of the things do have to suffer, unfortunately, with the proactive side.
On the right of way again, the 361, that's a number we haven't seen all of 2024. What was I know it has to be more than just you have people on hand to see that. Was there like something else, like the 4th of July example from 2024, there was a clear issue? Was there something with the right of way that was also a clear issue? And I apologize if you did say that already and I missed it, so.
Yeah, so right of way, we actually split out. So on the grass and weed notice, we have the Title 16 for grass and weeds, but we also have 1154, which is the responsibility of the right of way. So that would be sidewalk blocked by vegetation,
Okay.
or that would be tree limbs in the alley that are blocking the alley. So if it's if it's a sidewalk block that a bush is blocking the alley, or if there's a tree that's blocking the alley, those are coded as a right-of-way violation,
Okay.
just so those can't be
So
split
it's
out.
not just someone who's parked across someone's driveway or whatever, there's a whole
That would be coded as a parking,
parking, okay.
yes. Yeah, right-of-way is strictly materials or merchandise is how it's in code. And so that's what the right-of-way
Okay,
would
thank
be.
you.
okay, anything else there? My last question has to do with the park drop in terms of number of issues in parks. 2024 was 277 overall down to 67. Is that just coverage issue because your park ranger is not?
We no longer have a park ranger. Yep.
Okay, I thought maybe that was it.
You don't have a park ranger?
So about middle of July, our park ranger is actually now in the police academy for the city. So we do have another park ranger selected. We'll sort of get into the next staffing update, but they are scheduled to start at the end of September.
I just assumed it was too hot. Everyone's just laying around in the park.
So yeah, so park enforcement and extra patrols and all that are again back on the 3 district code officers to do all the park enforcement. So that's why those numbers are low as well.
Who does the parking control?
Parking control is done by the police traffic division.
Police?
Yeah.
Traffic?
Yep, so within the
Are
police
there
traffic,
people that are just designated for that?
yes. Yeah, within the traffic division, there's 3 police officers that do traffic, there's 2 motors and 1 vehicle officer, and then there's 2 parking officers. 1 focuses on abandoned vehicles, and then 1 full-time parking officer within the traffic division.
Do they normally just respond to requests, or are they out and about?
They respond to requests and are out and about.
They do both.
Moving on, just flip through the next ones if you would. They're all pretty much breakdowns from the parks as per our request. Is there anything anybody wants to respond to or notices that seems out of place? I think my questions have been answered 2 or 3 times now. You're right, Matt. Okay, no other questions, or are we still processing? That's fine. Linda, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Sonia?
Yeah.
Let's move on then. Staffing updates. Now you can tell us all about what you've been telling us 3 times about.
Yes, so currently we have our 2 seasonals and 3 code officers. Our park ranger is in the police academy for Inglewood. We do have a new park ranger that's been selected. I believe start date for that is September 22nd for a new park ranger. Our new code officer has also been selected, and our new code officer is scheduled to start next week. So our new code officer comes to us with lots of previous experience in animal control from another agency, very little code side, which is okay. We got the enforcement side. The animal side is the hard side to learn. A lot of the times with the nuances with animal behavior and that, so we're really excited. Lots of great experience. We're hoping they'll be able to jump right in and go from there. So our seasonals, we have 1 that's back to college, so they are part-time, and then the other 1 will be with us for about another month through the end of hopefully growing season. We start cooling off. So.
They'll be till what, through September?
Middle in September. Yep. And then the part-time, hopefully we're through the 1st of October, depending on school.
The part-time bit.
Our 1 code officer is back in school.
Oh, I thought they left.
No, so they're just part-time with us,
I
but we're
see.
hoping to keep them on through about the 1st of October.
I see, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on. Rita, what's new on council?
Not a whole lot. I actually do not have anything unless you all have a request. I mean, we've been talking about budget, and Monday night we tabled quite a bit of the agenda, so.
You were short a couple people, I think, weren't you?
Yes, and we actually started a half an hour late because we didn't have a quorum.
Oh, wow.
So we one of the e-arts thing that was on the agenda, that got tabled. Because by the time we had the 5th council member, we only had, I think, 35 minutes left, so.
You said the ER?
E-arts,
Oh,
which has to do with the rental of the building for, no, not the rental of parts of this building for music lessons and the Hampton Hall. They rent Hampton Hall. They use Hampton Hall for, and as a matter of fact, E-Arts is responsible for the renting of Hampton Hall also. So that was tabled, so. And it was a study session item, so it wasn't as. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to our subcommittees, plural now. Anything new? I know that the communication subcommittee was starting the process with regard to funding to help create some permanent things that we could use in future events. Rick?
yes, it was very apparent to me at the last neighborhood nights get together that we needed some identification. That we had a table, but nobody knew what we were. We didn't have any tchotchkes or swag to give away, like all the other, like the police department has tons of stuff. And the water department and all the departments have it. And it would be, but we did have the little summary of code enforcement and things that people, so that they could take it back with them and a synopsis, understand it, the major issues of code. And they really seemed to value that. I was there the first half, Sonia was there the second half. And people were interested and they took the information. I did spend a lot of time talking to them about, I tried to go through the codes real quickly, but focusing really on the angle fix. And it became very important to me, if we are looking at empowering the citizens of Englewood, Angle Fix is the vehicle to do that. And a lot of people don't know about it. As much as it is publicized in different areas, they don't really understand it or know about it. So getting back to this, and Rick and I have talked about this for quite a long time, of a refrigerator magnet. It would serve also as a swag for us. I did see Sean Lewis. He came up and we talked, and I told him we really needed some swag and I wanted to do Angle Fix. And he thought that was a great idea, and he said we should do it. So
Did he give you some money?
he said to talk to AJ, and that we are prepared to do it, is what he said. So he made a commitment to me that we can do something with Angle Fix. I really think long-term it'll be a real valuable thing, and it's something the police department can add at. I mean, it's not just for us. Any department can use it. And I just think it's so valuable. So anyway.
Can I add to that? I think you're absolutely right. It is valuable, but I think it would be great if we had, like the PD has one of those canopies for the PD. If code enforcement had one, because I've been walking the streets somewhat, and a lot of people talk to you about code enforcement, and I think if there was a sign up there, they would be coming to your table.
They do. They were interested.
Right.
And to know that there was a place that they could just call or do an email, whatever, to get those garbage cans in off the street that have been sitting there for months, they do it because they want their properties to look great. So anyway, so he said, talk to you, AJ. Now, this is something I do think that we could get some funding from planning. I think we could get some funding from police because they do swag already. Get some funding from water and sewer, so that because it's going to be for everybody, not just code enforcement.
Was there going, at the last meeting, there was a suggestion to connect with the city marketing department. Did
Right.
that conversation take place?
Informally with Edie at her
Yes.
impromptu communications committee meeting at the last neighborhood.
Yeah, I ran into Madeline And I spoke with her about our need to have some identification. She agreed. I said, I don't think we need to.
Everybody agrees.
Should we
Yeah.
put that into a formal email to the city and
Well, I think
get some action
Rick and
done
I
on
are
it?
gonna
Lee and I
meet
just
with her.
needed to collaborate on schedules to get some dates in front of Madeline, or to get some dates from Madeline so that we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, we're just gonna sit
Okay.
down and meet with her. They've done a communication plan that they are following for us. It's good, I mean, it's great. And this is just, you know, a part of expanding that. She agreed that we needed better identification, and she also liked the idea of the Engel Fix
I
thing.
think, oh, sorry, go on.
And maybe we could, with your design background, we could talk about designing an Engel Fix thing that fits with the logo of the city.
You may find that the communications department has that skill set already there. They
They
might
already
provide a few
have
graphic
Yeah,
designers
okay.
there that are very good. I would recommend, I'm sorry, Rick, you were gonna.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think what we have identified is that we have a need for a canopy, we have a need for a tablecloth. The city likely has a need for this tchotchke of a Engel Fix magnet.
We have-
We can take advantage of that, and then I think depending on where we're at, where I think it is logical for us to use our limited, is that an annual budget, the 250? That annual budget is in the production of a poster board or something specific that we wanted to talk about, so next year during neighborhood nights, it might be a fun little thing about grass and keeping your grass, or the native grasses, or however, whatever we come up with for a plan here to recommend to council around weeds and grass, right? Or it could be something about snow, or it could be something about right of way, or some of these other things that we see that may pop up as sustained issues or surface during certain times of the year. That's where I think we should say we have $250. We should create what we think is the right thing for us to be sort of passing out and talking about and highlighting as our focus area. But I do think the canopy need and the tablecloth need is real and has a budget that is greater than $250. And I think we can connect with Madeline around how can we support, lean in, weigh in, or talk to our other committees to say, hey, we'd like to create this thing that we think everyone can benefit from, and how do we get that done?
First step. I would also recommend, and just because I have sat on this subcommittee before, is that maybe you take a few minutes of her time on that agenda to reevaluate the magazine emphases, the communication emphases, just to make sure we're still kind of making the punch that we want to have. They've really taken the lead on it since we broke down that thing, and I don't know how much Dave or you are adding to those pieces. Are you at all?
Dave does review them.
Okay.
They'll send the updates of this is for fall, this is for winter, do we need
Okay.
to add anything? And he'll be in communication with communications on that for
Okay.
what's the next one coming out, do we need to add anything or those topics.
I think it would be a good idea to touch base with her again on it, because it has been a while since we did that. But I agree, I think you guys are on the right track, and I look forward to, whatever you guys are able to sit down and do. 250 is a pittance, folks. And unfortunately, I'm not, complaining that because we at least have some money, but I do think that if you do some cross-department kinds of things, especially Engel Fix is a cross-department thing.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
you should be able to gather monies together to be able to put that process happening. Hold the 250 for the things that are specific to Seattle, that kind of thing. That would be my
And
recommendation.
get the police to pay for the canopy and the table.
So do we have 250 this year's budget? Is it kind of the policy, if you don't spend it, you lose it?
As far back as I've been told is we've always had the 250 and
We've never spent it, really.
we've never spent it, and every year you just get the 250, it doesn't bill. So, what my recommendation would be is that if we want to go for those 3 items, if we want to make a motion, if that's what we want to move forward with this year, I can, if it's approved by the membership, I can start that process and see, because it would be in most likely excess, especially if the magnets right there are gonna be in excess. But if that's something where we do have backing from the city of a need that's been identified, I can start that process and see what funding, if the tablecloths come from communications, the canopy comes from PD, the magnets come from communications, if that's something that is in budgets already. And then they just take out your portion for this year and just spread across all three. I can start looking into that as well, if we want to use this year, since we don't have any more neighborhood nights, to use the money on this year and then save that for next year. We can move forward with that at least, and then get those ordered, because I do know lead time on some of those custom prints are months. So at least get that going over the winter months, if approved, and that way I can at least bring it back next month and give an update, if that's what you want to see, and at least get an answer, yes or no. And then when you meet with Madeline, maybe you could focus more on design of what the actual magnet would look like. They could start designing it, and then look at the magazine and the communication stuff and spend the time that way instead of the background work, if that's what you're interested in.
Somebody want to make a motion? Matthew, how do you want to word it there?
I'd like to make a motion that this committee makes a recommendation to Officer Futuro to investigate a quote for a collaboration between the police department and the city communications department to identify funding for a tabletop banner or a tablecloth for potentially a magnet that has useful information, and for a canopy that can be deployed to help educate the citizens of Inglewood about the role of the enforcement committee and answer questions they may have.
Second?
Can we discuss?
Oh, well, we gotta get our second, and then we can
Okay.
discuss.
I second.
I know this. Seconding, anybody like to second? You did, okay. Now,
So I actually would like to see it a little bit more concise. We want magnets, we want a tablecloth, and we want a canopy, so that then it's a yes or no answer. Because if you ask them to look into it, you will never see the answer to that.
And magnet around Anglefix with Inglewood branding, correct?
With what?
With Anglefix and Inglewood branding, correct?
is that the
Right.
intention of the magnet?
Yes,
Okay.
that it can be used across departments. Also, which you brought up, I think it's very valuable, a poster board. It, like if we're sitting there, there's something there that we can point to, or a series of poster boards, one that deals with weeds and grass or whatever, you know.
Well, that's something.
I think that's for, oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry. That's something that can change. You can
Yeah.
have a series of them, but that's fairly inexpensive to do. And then you just have a stand, and I've got a stand, I donate to it, for those type of things.
Oh, okay,
That's a simple fix.
okay.
And I believe we can address that through the communications conversation with Madeline, the group conversation here, and then produce those as needed. I think it's the allocation. We would like to allocate our $250 toward
The following.
an Anglefix magnet, a canopy, and a tablecloth,
Do you want to restate your?
branded for
Yes.
CAC.
For those three, okay, fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
May I restate
Yes,
Yes.
please.
the request? All right, let's see.
Just what he said.
I request that we allocate $250 toward the purchase of a canopy, Anglefix magnets, and a tablecloth, and that Officer Futuro
And poster board information.
and poster board information, and that request be carried forward by the Officer Futuro.
Second to that one.
I second it.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 And all those opposed, say nay. Okay, measures passed. One last thing, and I think this again goes to the neighborhood nights. just a general discussion, do people feel, those who have helped with it, that this is a positive thing? It sounds like it is. Okay, I'd like to put it formally, and I'd like to someone make a motion that we continue to engage with neighborhood nights in 2026 so that we have a plan moving forward, so that we're working toward that. Would anybody like to motion to continue that?
I motion that we continue to have representation from the Code Enforcement Committee on neighborhood nights with a table and canopy and swag to give away.
Okay, all right, this is second that motion.
Second.
Second, okay, all in favor of continuing the neighborhood nights program into 2026, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Any other comments on that part? Okay, let's move on.
I would like just to make a comment. In the last magazine, this is the only thing on code that I can find. I would like to have had more things on code, like fall cleanup or something.
And I think that that's one of the reasons I asked that you kind of rekindle the fire
Yeah.
with communications about our presence.
Because
in there.
they've been really good with
I
it.
think that whoever kind of talks the most gets the most space,
Gotcha.
right? Because I know
Yeah.
sustainability hasn't had any problem.
Just a question, is communication on any other committees? For example, is there a representative from the communication department on another committee or?
There are only two committees, yours and our communication.
Oh, no, outside of code enforcement.
No, that's a staff department, there isn't a committee.
On a committee role.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a very good group.
And they've done a heck of a job the last 2 years, just doing a very good job of communicating.
I had one more thought
Yeah,
on neighborhood nights. I think it's best to stay in your own area because I felt like I had a lot of success because so many people recognized me from living in the neighborhood for so long. So I think it's good to sort of try to do your own neighborhood because the kids came up, the parents came up, Joe Jefferson came up, everybody was like, oh, there you are. My husband was with me, people from the bike shop came up, and so it was,
So
it's good to
in
be
terms
part of a familiar face in the neighborhood.
In terms of strategizing the future attendance or representation from this, that we pick people or hopefully people volunteer for their local park.
Yes, I think it's,
Helpful.
yes.
I don't have one. I don't have a park.
You're not too far from Rotolo.
Where is that?
That's just east of you, next to the Gerard Apartments. Behind there, it's the Mushroom Park with all
Oh, the mushroom park?
Yeah.
Everybody takes their dogs and everything to that open space. It's owned by Swedish. Right in front of, it's right in front of the nursing home. Assisted living. And so,
Julia Temple.
it doesn't have a name.
Okay.
It's just a open park area. And Swedish put in some Frisbee things in
Oh,
there.
no, there's another different park called Rotolo, and it's further east.
Right, I know where it is, but
And
people
they-
around us don't go there.
Well, we'll work through that next year. I think early on, we can kind of get that ball rolling and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be in their local areas. I think that's a good suggestion. So, moving on, let's go on to the Grass and Weeds Subcommittee. And we have been presented by that committee with a wonderful summary of basically what was presented at our last meeting. And then also the research requested regarding the various ordinances in localities and municipalities around us, as well as an outline for topics of consideration. Thank you very much, those of you who put time into that. It's very comprehensive. It's certainly a great springboard for us. Is there anything, I'd like to start off by asking the subcommittee if they would like to kind of just do an overview of what they did, why they did it, and what their thoughts are on it.
For sure thing. Linda and I met in person just to review the draft. We've made some modifications. Our intent was to provide some clarity and a framework for consideration. The outline begins with the current definition, the proposed definition in Chapter 6 that has yet to be approved. We outlined issues with the current language, really focusing on vague terminology, redundancy, also taking into account the previous meetings' input regarding pollinators and xeriscaping programs that are available for city residents. We also spent time in terms of consideration looking at intent, looking at nuisances, risks, property type, definitions of responsible parties. There's a lot of overlap with what's in the packet here, in this proposed packet. Locations as it applies to the weed policy. So we've heard certainly in terms of locations, the city has property in parks, maybe where there's weeds. Houses, commercial, residential, alleys, right away, buildings, grounds, these types of things are also considerations for discussion. Defining and prioritizing the list. And that's fairly extensive based on being asked to take a look at the existing building code for new build landscaping. Property management considerations. What we didn't cover was the actual formal process of notice of violation, remediation, or remedy for failure to comply or abatement. Again, that's outside of what we spent time focusing on. We provided a list of references, and as suggested, we took a look at other municipalities, provide a summary as well as specific definitions that they've included. So Littleton, Boulder, Arvada, Castle Rock were other references for us. And ultimately, after discussion, refinement, we put together what we thought was an expanded draft definition for consideration on page 10. So a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
Very well
Nearly
done.
Great read.
complete.
But we felt like we want to be proactive about this. We want to get something done here. And this is a good launch point for us.
I'm assuming that in addition to the data gathering that you did, that you had some discussions with regard to what you saw from other cities as you were interpreting these. What was your take? Are they doing a better job than us? Are we doing better than them? Are they more complete than we are at this point?
They're certainly more complete. More complete, I think there's specificity around weed height seemed to be ranging between 6, 8, and 12. I think we looked at that as being an important distinction in terms of enforcement. We also debated the fact that weeds grow, and so that's also a challenge depending on the definition and the type of the weed. Some of them, weed, grass, brush, grow into maturity. I mean, there's ultimately creating guidelines for code enforcement to use discretion is the outcome that we need to arrive at. We felt like, for example, the city of Littleton had a pretty good definition. City of Boulder really, we felt like tied that into a nuisance and some of the fire risks with what happens with weeds when they die. So those were important things that we felt also need to be considered. Would be a risk, a fire risk, in light of some of the fire hazards that are out there. Tying it into the weed ultimately being a nuisance is also an important consideration for abatement considerations. And then we included the city of Arvada's abatement procedures because the other municipalities didn't have that, and it's quite extensive. It really starts on page 5 and goes through page 9. So while that was not something that we were tasked with defining, we included it as a point of reference.
Can we comment or no?
Anything else you want to add in terms of what you kind of brought to us here?
You did. He put this all together and I just went through it, made comments on it. He's done a tremendous job on this.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, I think that I would just add that the agricultural definition with the Colorado noxious weeds list, list A species, list B species, and list C, along with the watch list, is pretty extensive. And I think a lot of those are really more agriculturally focused. I understand that's the foundation for the state statute. So I think we need to also take that into consideration for either inclusion or exclusion. Ultimately, we'd like just something nice and tidy that's more comprehensive than what we currently have proposed.
Edie, you had a question?
Yeah, I noticed in Arvada on C, on the abatement, it says notice will state, it's page 6. Notice will state that the weeds must be cut to a height less than 8 inches and noxious weeds removed. Then they go down to weeds cut to an A of payment of assessment of 12 inches. So they, I don't know, you know. The other thing that I look at is when I look at Boulder and particularly Boulder and Arvada, they have a lot of open space. And they have potential development, a lot of, well, I don't know about Boulder, they don't want to develop anything, but they have a lot of open space, and Arvada is developing a lot in their open space, and they do have quite a bit of what you call it, like land that they're developing. So
It's a good point. Our footprint here in Inglewood is quite different.
yeah, it's very different, and because we don't have that. I loved your definition of weeds at the end here, and I think we should look at that, do any tweaking here that we think might be appropriate, and make a recommendation that this be adopted by council. I think it would clear up a lot of issues that the people that came here wanting to xeriscape their yards, xeriscape their gardens with wildflowers, and native plants, as long as those native plants aren't noxious or aren't on the A, B, C, and watch lists. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think thank you for your comments. I think the 6, 8, 12 inches, that's going to be something we need to sort
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
I do look at,
We're pretty short.
for example, my neighbor, they've done a great job xeriscaping. They do have ginormous sunflowers, right, that are, I don't know, I'm 6 feet tall, they're 8 feet tall, so I'm not particularly opposed to that type of thing, but I understand they do spread seeds and they can volunteer all over the place. I don't think you can grow sunflower that's shorter than 6 inches or 8 inches or 12 inches. So again, I think
The ones
it's
in my yard.
things for us to consider, yeah.
Right.
In the agricultural places, sunflowers are noxious weeds because they take over fields. But, I mean, I've seen fields of the huge sunflowers
Yeah,
that they have harvest sunflower seeds from, but
because they
those
do,
other sunflowers, like
Oil.
trying to walk down the street, do we do anything about those, like west of Broadway on Dartmouth? And they get so thick that people can't walk on the sidewalk then?
All of them, as of last inspection, were either cut back or tied back to the fences, so they could walk down the sidewalk.
So I live right around the corner. They're still, I think that's like a perfect example. So the property owner, are they responsible for the little slice adjacent to the street
Yes.
in between the sidewalk? So their property, they're responsible for the sidewalk and that little area? Okay. So
they are.
they're definitely still there, but I don't mind them, but I do think they have been trimmed back a little bit. But that's, yeah, I think that's education too. Like, is
Right.
that, I think some people may think that's the city's obligation.
I think so.
I appreciate also the work that went into this. I think that the definition, as has already been suggested here, is a great place to start the conversation. And I think, at least in terms of defining weeds, moves us to a quicker resolution to be able to recommend to council. I had a question on 15.6.1 though, the actual, not the definition, but where we would refer to the definition, right, of weeds. So is the recommendation or suggestion or the conversation we still need to have around, once we've defined weeds, does this still read correctly? I know there were some conversations around the removal of weeds and grass to sites authorized for disposal when there's recommendations that sometimes you leave your grass clippings where they are in order to mulch your yard. And I know that wasn't the charge, so like I said, I start by saying I appreciate this. This definition is great, and I think it's really important. I'm just curious if our plan was to rely on the definition of weeds to support 15.6.1, or if we also believe that we need to revisit 15.6.1 to make a recommendation on a rewrite.
I think you're right, Rick. Really, there were two issues that Dana brought before us, and one had to do with the poor definition of what a weed is and how, native grasses as well. I think there's another piece of that definition too that perhaps we need to look at as native grasses. But those are going to preclude us making a recommendation on any changes to 15.6.1, because we have to know what we're talking about before we put it in words. And I think that the other piece of this, and Matthew and Linda, you've done a terrific job of getting us started on this, is that we need to kind of do the interface now with AJ, with Dave, because building something that requires an unruly amount of enforcement, I think is counterproductive. We've heard nothing but the shorthandedness that you already have. The idea that you would hire in seasonal workers that would have to go through some kind of course in order to understand, I think is unrealistic. So we need to make sure that whatever we change in 15.6.1 is something which I think can be easily enforced by code enforcement. So kind of keeping that eye open. Any other discussion about the definition? Is there, I had one comment, and it again addresses sunflowers, because as Rita said, sunflowers are considered in a sense a noxious and invasive weed, and yet there are a lot of people who grow sunflowers. And I know particularly it was brought up when by Councilperson Wright with regard to areas that are that she particularly feels that anything that might interfere with that opportunity for people to grow sunflowers. So I think we either need to put it in as a specific exception of, that we, and I think the way I worded it here was sunflowers providing, and this would be under the exemptions included, would be sunflowers providing that they do not block right of way or create a safety hazard. And I think that education piece of making sure that people understand how sunflowers can be grown in this area allows them to be permitted in this area. So we kind of create that exception.
I'd like to,
Go on.
I'd like to suggest that this is a good start, but this is a start. I'd like everybody to look at it. I'd like us to work with AJ and plug it into the existing code and see how it fits. And then also look at those other parts, see how they fit together, and then bring it back to the committee. The sunflowers, I agree. I've seen some of the natural landscapes that have been put in there, very pretty the first or second year, and then they let them get out of control. And then they look like a disaster area. And that maybe needs to be addressed in some of this too, along with sunflowers, that they need to keep them under control. And, sunflowers aren't hard to pull and get rid of. If you've got them in there, they have a very shallow root system and they're easy to pull, but something maybe needs to be put in there. But this is a starting point. And then we can plug it in, see how it looks next time, and then recommend it to go forward.
I would just add, if you look on page 10 at A, there's a nuance in the second line that is not intentionally cultivated or maintained and is grown in an unmanaged condition. So that's important, in a manner that poses a public nuisance, safety hazard, or fire risk. So I think that the unmanaged condition that then creates a situation is the nuance that we're trying to get, that would have a lot of different plants fall into this category. Sunflower would certainly fall into that category. It speaks a bit to intent in terms of managed or unmanaged, or in the way that we refer to unmanaged condition. So I think, Rick, to your previous comment, that's kind of trying to capture what you were referring to.
Yeah, I used almost some of those words when I made my exception thing down there. Part of it was they think that it needs to be obvious, and that's part of the reason that I brought it up as a separate issue there. I do have another question though, and I guess it had to do with your item D on that same page. Any volunteer tree saplings, brush, or scrubs that are not purposefully planted, maintained, and exceed 12 inches in height. I'm a little concerned about that because elms grow everywhere in this city, and they do all by themselves. And bushes, I've got more bushes in my yard that my neighbors planted than I planted.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of maintain them, but I kind of don't. So thoughts about that?
I think, a couple of things. I think, when are we going through this definition, right? Because I think that is if we're doing that right now, let's go line by line and have some thoughts, some conversation. As Linda and Matthew have said, this is a starting point. It's a really strong one. I do think where I want to just go back to the conversation on sunflowers and other things, where it becomes prohibited for AJ and his team, I think, is when we start calling out too many exceptions. And so I do appreciate the attention to wanting to write this in a purposefully nuanced way, right? Not just a nuanced way because we couldn't figure it out another way around it, or we're trying to be slick, but an intentionally nuanced way, which I think, again, point A makes around being able to give our folks the opportunity to address sunflowers that are out of control, or some other flower, or some other thing that is tall that has been planted or has moved itself through yards. Yeah, and so so I did want to go back to that and just say that I think it's important to call it out and of course have a discussion. I also want to make sure that the definition of weeds supports the residents of Englewood. And so I'm interested to hear what AJ's team's feedback is on the ability to manage. But I think we need there to be a strong balance between what code enforcement can enforce and the needs of our community. And so I think, again, that's why A through E are a good place to start, and the definition of weeds is a good place to start, because I think it's very easy to get in the weeds. Sorry,
So
I've been holding that one.
So easy.
I've been holding that one since the last
Wait
meeting.
for that let's just open it up to the group then. We are kind of like dancing now into the weeds. If we want to do that now, we can. I'd allocated 45 minutes. I think we spent probably 20 so far doing it. So if we want to talk a little bit more, we can about it. If we want to let this kind of percolate, so to speak, and I would be interested, I think, in hearing what code enforcement feels about this definition. If they see that there's anything in there that we are kind of like, oh my God, you're opening a can of worms there, we don't want to do that. What's your thoughts? Do you want to keep talking about it, or we want to kind of?
Yeah, I would like to offer another comment on D here, the volunteer tree sapling. So part of that was the alley walk lived experience that I had. I know code enforcement was out and ticketed just about everybody on the block, which was great and welcomed. But I do think E below that also covers some of that in terms of overgrown vegetation, where we're not bringing in brush and trees and other definitions outside of a weed or a plant or native or non-native. So I just wanted to address that. That's Linda and I had spoken about, these volunteers, things that obstruct, your alley, and they're, well, some of them are knee-high, right? But a lot of them are overgrown, coming in over the fence lines, mingling with the power lines, and
Right.
creating kind of canopies within the alleys. And those are,
Yeah, and I've never seen that as bad as it is in the past, is what it is now.
yeah.
And in my area anyway, I was shocked when I got back there and started driving down the alley again, because I normally don't go back there. And just how much brush has come up there.
So that was our trigger. We felt that was why we included that in here, but also recognizing that it could be outside the scope.
So D was not originally in here.
No.
But I mean, that's immediately what I thought of when you read that, is the trees in the alley. Because if you take care of them when they're little, and like all the elm trees, I had boatloads of seeds. I cannot tell you how many elm trees I pulled. When they're only this long, they're pretty easy to pull.
Yeah.
But if you let them get 12 inches or more, then they're a little bit more difficult to pull.
But some of them, I've turned some of those suckers that I keep cutting them down, and they keep coming back. And I've turned some of them into hedges, and some of them I'm going to cut down again. But I've had some that I cut them down to ground level, and they're 7-8 foot tall now, just since spring.
Right.
Oh, my God.
But I can take some of those, and I've done that in several places, that I can trim them and turn them into a tree or into a nice bush that I can use for privacy. And that works, but then you have to maintain them, and that can be a problem. But it's a good starting point. I think it's excellent. I think we need to plug it in and then have AJ look at it and see what you think. And if it'll go into practice, but I think this is a good starting point for us.
Rick, what is the process? Do we ask AJ for his feedback right now?
Well, I think we can request that, we get, and I'll call it formal, but something which is thought through by Dave, you, and whoever you feel that ought to contribute to that, to see if we're heading in the right direction, if they perceive anything that's amiss in this, and that we need to really tweak or change or omit. This is a balancing act. We're the citizens trying to come up with something that's going to work, but we also know that we're charging one of our city departments with a responsibility here. So I would appreciate before we meet next time, if you could get a statement or something which would be sort of reflective of what's happened already before we take the next step and try to rewrite the ordinance on this.
Yeah, and for the process, basically where we're at would just be the recommendations. You don't have to rewrite the ordinance, that'll be done by the city attorney's office. But where really the recommendation is sort of from our side, because we've had these conversations in the past, this isn't the first time Grass and Weeds have come in front of this group. But the biggest thing is it's still inspected from the right of way. So we're not going on the property to inspect for 99% of our properties. So if we're looking for the noxious weeds, it's whatever we can inspect from the right of way. If we are inspecting for noxious weeds, I mean, ultimately, whatever council would like to push through, if we want to inspect for noxious weeds, like I was telling Edie earlier at one of my old departments up in the mountains, as police officers, we didn't have a lot of calls for service 15 years ago. For a lot of our larger properties, our undeveloped properties, as police officers, we would go and go, hey, that property's got noxious weeds, we'd write them up, they wouldn't comply, we'd refer them to the county noxious weed program, and the county would come out and spray the entire property. The county receives funding from the state for noxious weeds, not as much anymore as 15 years ago. The city won't, because that's a county charge by the state. So if we're being charged with identifying noxious weeds on a property, the state's not offering a lot of trainings. I think our last officer went about 6 years ago to a noxious weed class. I don't know of any other trainings that have been offered since. So yeah, we can get a book out and do our best, but again, it's from the right of way. That's going to be walking every property instead of driving. It's going to be more time, and then it's whatever in-depth inspections you want. It's going to be staffing. So that's going to be additional staffing, additional seasonals with budget. Next year, doubtful, but it's going to be whatever the citizens want, whatever council wants to approve. We'd be happy to do it. If we want stricter regulations, that's something that we'll absolutely go through. We would just need the support from the council and the city to be able to enforce it. So again, you're charged with listening to the citizens and pushing forward what the citizens want, same with council, and making the best decisions through that. We'll enforce that direction. We would just, on that enforcement side, need to follow through with the support for us to be able to do that enforcement. So from our side of things, that's sort of where it is. For the volunteer trees and sapling portion, I know right now we have had a lot change with our alleys, probably in the last 5 years. We've seen it a lot worse in the alleys recently. A lot of our trash companies quit driving through. Believe it or not, the trash trucks in the alleys helped quite a bit. Regardless of the rutting or the potholes, they actually helped a lot in our alleys keep the vegetation back because they were so large. I think we only have 1 or 2 trash companies that would even attempt the alleys anymore, and they have a lot smaller trucks. I know our public works department, I've had several conversations with the street supervisor of some of the alleys they can't even get into because of the brush, the trees, and that. So they have to go in with the graders, and people call and then complain about, oh, well, we planted a garden back there. Well, technically within that 16-foot, center of the alley 8-foot, center of the alley 8-foot, you're not supposed to have anything. So that's something that if you want to include that for maybe limit the saplings to the alley side, that all vegetation within the 16-foot right of way of the alley has to be completely removed. That may be something you want to look at as well for the alley maintenance side of things. So if you're looking at changing it or doing definitions with saplings, again, it's up to council for, do we want to be going on someone's property telling them, hey, this is a nice tree for saplings for a hedge, like Member Hart mentioned. Well, no, we don't care. It's not intentionally, it's blown in. We're making you remove it anyways. That's something for the definitions, what you'd have to decide on sort of the guidance of where you want to go, and ultimately what council would like to approve as well. So, I mean, from our side, we're happy, whatever the citizens want, whatever the board wants, whatever council wants, we'll enforce it. The strict regulations to keep it clean, to reduce the spread of the noxious weeds. I mean, we're all for it. We understand the implications from the agriculture side, long-term. Staffing side, right now there's 3 of us. So that's always gonna be a challenge. So that's sort of where we're coming from, but we'll make it work and we'll work our way through the process.
I think,
What?
Who was first?
I'll wait.
Edie?
Oh, I think that there are two things. One is the issue of enforcement. The other is the issue of what is the definition? What is this about? What is the definition? And what I heard from the people that came here, they wanted to have a definition. They really were seeking a definition because if they are not growing A, B, C, D, and possibly E in their gardens, that they, you know, that would be a weed. You know what I'm saying? So I think that you have to have both, but I do see the leeway. You do the best you can in terms of enforcement, you know? You do the very best you can, and then, but you have a definition that people can fall back on.
So there was something in the definitions that I really appreciated, because even garden in a box or perennials can get out of control.
Sure.
And so it has to be maintained, and I think a good example of that is Depot Park. And that's a continual battle.
Where is this?
It's over at Dartmouth and just west of Galapago, I think, before you get to Santa Fe.
Yep.
Across from Cushing Park.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
across from-
Englewood Depot, yes, it is across from Cushing Park.
Okay, and somebody has
historic depot.
planted something there?
There is, that is native plants. And I think one of our members tries, he's a volunteer
He
maintainer over
works
there,
pretty hard. Michael works pretty hard trying to keep the weeds down,
and it's very difficult.
and it is a challenge. And I do know that Parks is now in the process of hiring someone who will be a manager for that property.
Mhm.
And that they're now doing a more active coordination of that. And just for reference, Dana Liebert, who was here, was the person who got Depot Park off the ground. And so she made that whole thing happen, she and a small group of people. So she's very dedicated to that, but she also sees that what happens if you don't maintain them is that they do get overgrown by weeds. But I think that we need to focus on the fact that we are trying to come up with a policy, or at least with a definition that does allow that when the native grass areas get overgrown, that something can be done about them. Okay, it's not that you ignore those things. So we have to kind of make sure that that's within whatever we end up with. Rick, you had a comment too.
I think it was just, it ended up being now echoing Edie. I think the way that folks are going to see themselves represented, which I know I brought up the last time, was really important to me, hearing what we heard and hearing what we hear, is the definition approach, right? How do we define weeds in a way in which we are making clear what we mean? Then, as AJ said, when 1561 is written in a way that then supports code enforcement, that's the approach. And I think even the definition here, where there is a list of noxious weeds, is a beginning of just recognizing that there is a list of noxious weeds. There's nothing even in that definition that says you have to do something different than manage it to how you're managing it now, which is 6 inches, right? So I think having it defined so people can see themselves reflected in the definitions positively or negatively is the right approach, and the great approach, I think, in order, because we would never be able to recommend anything for 1561 specifically that would make people feel like they were included in that.
Anything else?
Does Englewood have, they used to have a day, I think at least once a year, where you could take branches and yard type of waste. Do they still have that?
No,
Why?
Not
That
like
would
they
be
used to.
helpful.
Well, they do have composting areas, we have composting programs within the city
Mhm.
that you can take things, but as far as branches and weeds, I don't think that's existing.
No, we do the Christmas tree, drop off for, mulching. After a couple of big storms that we've had, the city has opened up emergency sites for limb disposal and that. Unfortunately, with those sites, commercial contractors and outside of Inglewood people have dumped so much other material, that the cost was astronomical. I want to say the last one we did, it's been several years ago, we were, I want to say in excess of $100,000 for cleanup.
this was for the Christmas tree?
No, this
No.
is for one of the big
The
storm
one over at
cleanups.
Centennial Park,
Yeah.
for the drop
Yep.
off after the big storm.
Yeah, that dirt lot behind Centennial Park on the southwest corner. We filled that lot probably, 30 foot tall. And we had police patrols overnight, and contractors and people were running our fences down and just dumping everything. And the cost ended up getting so high, to mulch that and chip it up that became cost prohibitive and a danger liability for the city for that.
Well, it was just supposed to be like limbs and stuff.
Yep, and for residences. And
Right,
so they
residents.
They opened it up, they had
Can't
park
believe
staff, we were down there, saying, hey, you're a resident, great. If you didn't have your ID, we were down there running license plates going, yep, you're registered in the city, come dump. But unfortunately, it got way out of hand, and why they ended the once a year program for residents, I don't know. I just know the other programs that we open up for those courtesy storms and that, it just got so out of hand that it became a liability and a hazard.
But I
But
know there's
we-
programs in the city, like where, with Madeline, where there's neighborhood grants and they can go, I think, a neighborhood project, like getting a dumpster, I think is up to like $350. Can't remember the totals. I know like the parties are $500, but I think the neighborhood grants were like $350. But a bunch of people could write a grant for it, get a dumpster, and all clean out their alley together and put all the debris in, and then get partial payment back from the city. And I know things like that have been happening. So
Yeah,
it's not completely gone away, it's just sort
Yeah.
of done in a different way.
So,
What, a-
you can go ahead, I wanna.
that's a thought. I've got one neighbor that he wouldn't know one end of a chainsaw from the other. Sweet guy, but his alley has got so many small trees. And I can go over there and cut them, but I can't deal with getting rid of them. I got too many of my own that have come up volunteer that I'm working with. Is there any way to avoid that type of situation where people are dumping that aren't citizens? To work out something, since we have waste management right here, to work out some kind of a discount program or something for a day for residents or a week or something? That they could take them to waste management, that they would let them dump there for less money or something along those lines, I wonder?
I know in the past we've looked at different options. I know that came up during the single hauler conversation for discounts for like large items and haul yourself to the dump.
Yeah.
And that didn't go anywhere, but I'm not sure that would be necessarily an option.
There is a discount.
With the, for
There is a
the
discount.
small quantities.
There is a discount.
How do you go about getting it?
In fact, it was in one of the magazines, I believe. Madeline, I forgot how you do it. You call them up. And the discount for big item pickup and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're not worried
But
about
I-
just the
I'm-
branches.
Yeah, I don't know about trees and branches.
Because then you could go together, get somebody with a
Yeah.
pickup to work with a couple of neighbors, and then you could work together and get something done. And I'd love to do that with this guy. I got a chainsaw, I can cut them, I just can't haul them anywhere. And something like that, people coming together and helping each other in some way to help get that.
No, and I'm going to
Taken
bring
care
this
of.
back together to where we are in this,
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
can kind of keep moving ahead. I appreciate that conversation. I'd like some consensus on this. Are we of a consensus that this is the direction that we want to go with the definition of weeds?
Can I make a comment
Sure.
before we do that? Because it's not just the group of people that were here talking about that. There are other weeds that are problems. And part of the reason we had code enforcement to begin with is to make sure our city is well-maintained and a place that we would like to live. And I think you need to decide what we need to do, not make decisions based on how many code enforcement people we have. Because if we make, it could be that that may rise to the top, that people do care what the city looks like. And then the priority for council will then be, we need more code enforcement officers and we don't maybe need this or that. So we need to decide what we want the city to look like, because I have been walking in, down in District 4 a lot, close to Bellevue Park, and there are a lot of people down there that are unhappy about code enforcement issues and really other enforcement issues. But the truth is, the same issues are all over the city, not just down there.
And like I said earlier, thanks Rita for bringing that up, that it's whatever the citizens, what the board and what council wants.
Right.
We will enforce that as long as we have the support. So we're 3 of us right now, and we may be 3 of us in the future, but whatever rules, municipal code, laws, whatever else that the citizens want, that you want to support them with, that council wants to approve, if that's the priority that council wants to go with, we will do that. We're happy to do that. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with.
Thank you.
And I think with this conversation around the definitions helps also highlight, which I think leads into what Rita was suggesting, is that cutting and removing of weeds and grass, as it's stated in 1561, is about the cutting and removing of weeds and grass, not the removal of noxious weeds or removal of a particular type of plant. It is the cutting down and then the removal of that waste, right? And so it may be that our recommendation is that there is a 1561 or a 1562 that is about the removal of the noxious weeds or these other plants, or something that addresses again that point that citizens are making that then we provide as a recommendation. So that's the last part that I would say on that. So.
Duly noted. I think that's what the city of Littleton has done in terms of first defining cutting of weeds and noxious vegetation control, and then defining it underneath. So I agree. I think that makes that's our challenge right there, is to create something.
Yeah, the nuances like that, don't worry about. Put the recommendation in for what you want to see within that, and if we need to reword the title and do subcategories and however, whatever recommendations you want, we'll work with the city attorney's office to make it within that section. So if it just changes to vegetation and then grass and weeds and noxious weeds and saplings and alleys, or whatever recommendations you make, we can make it subcategories.
Yep.
So yeah, whatever you want in there, just feel free to put it in. We'll make the recommendations and they can draft.
More using that as an organizational thing, because it's sitting in front of all of us, than like we have to sit here and decide how many subcategories of things there is. So
They got people for that.
Otherwise it gets too.
Yeah, I would volunteer for the subcommittee to go back and provide several draft on several expanded definitions here. We can consolidate what's been provided on page 10 into potentially 2 or 3 other definitions to consider at the next meeting and try to move this forward.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like building the foundation for a house. Is you got to know what a block is before you use a block. And so coming up with maybe a handful more of those sort of sub definitions that help us to build whatever it is we're going to end up with. Are you okay with doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and bring it back next time and we'll review that.
And I do think we should review and go line, like whatever, if there is one that is standing out or a combination of the recommendations, like I think we need to coalesce around that and then go.
And if there's a couple different ways to go, we could set it up one way and then
sure.
give you the option or, you know.
Yeah, we'll provide a couple and then hopefully the outcome of the next meeting optimally would be to make a recommendation.
And run them by AJ. Is that okay with you?
Okay, that sounds excellent. One request I would have to the subcommittee is, can this be submitted in order to make the agenda, like we would want to have it in there? Would you need 2 weeks ahead of the meeting to allow you to put it in? Would that be safe?
The Monday of the week before the meeting.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we can get it.
Monday of the week before the meeting. Okay.
We get it done in 2 weeks, yeah.
So
That way, and you can send that directly to AJ.
Okay.
Copy me on it.
Okay.
So.
9 days before. How about
Nine-
that? At a minimum.
Plenty of time.
Oh, we're back
Okay.
to the animal thing now, it sounds like.
Okay.
9 business days.
Very good. We are at unfinished business. I would love to get us to knock out 1571 through 1574. I don't know, has everybody had a chance to review, take a look at that so we can discuss that? If you can move to that. I'm hoping that it will be fairly straightforward. I've got a handful of questions, but let's get started on that. This is basically trash, junk, and salvage. And starting with 1571, there are general regulations that I'm not going to go through every one of these. If anybody has any particular piece of this that they have questions about, what do you see?
1571E. The sweeping into the streets. What is the, I guess people do that all the time, so I think we all know one, people shouldn't do it, but I guess I'm just curious, like what enforcement, you know, and that's like you go to Angle Fix and you're like, someone's sweeping stuff into the street, and then 4 days, 5 days later, it's not in the street anymore, it's down the street or whatever. I guess that one I'm bringing it up just because that one always stands out to me as something that is kind of like snow removal and grass and weeds, right?
I
It's a
think
common
it's
thing.
good to be there because it clogs up the sewer, and then especially if you live in a low-lying area.
Well, I'm not recommending it shouldn't
Have
be
a lot of
there.
flooding.
My
So
point
it's-
is, it's not, I don't know that anyone
I don't think
follows
there's,
15.
I don't think anybody calls on it,
7.8.
but it's good to have it there so people
Is this a big issue?
will know. Because if somebody's going off with their leaf blower, putting everything in the street, you can be like, hey, that's not a good idea.
1571E.
Well, you've
So
got the lawn companies on my block are doing that. And they come in and they mow the lawns and then they blow everything into the street.
They don't
And-
collect the clippings?
No, the clippings that if they land on the sidewalk or anywhere near the sidewalk, they blow them into the street
But when they're mowing, they collect.
when they're
Or
mowing.
bagging, yeah.
Yeah, but
They're not
that,
baggy.
it's not that much. They go
It
away.
I mean,
adds
there's a lot
up.
of dirt and dust and
Does
stuff that
it?
accumulates in the
Yeah.
But
sidewalk.
and I
And
guess
our
that's-
drains have been clogged. The one in our block, it's been clogged numerous times. And I think part of it is that.
Why I call that one out here is simply, because it is one that I think is, the rest of these are all very clear. You do not throw trash in the street if you do, this one, I think, stands out in this section to me as, how do we help bold this one, or how do we help call attention to this one? So that's why I call it out, not that it should not be here, but that it is the one out of all of A through L. That everyone sort of, there's a blind eye to E.
What do you think, AJ? Is it something you deal with?
So it's dealt with in different ways. Mainly during the summer months, it is the landscaping companies. There's 2 ways we deal with it. If it's after they get done and it's just those few clippings that they're getting off of the sidewalk, just so it's not slick for walking or wheelchairs or anything.
Mhm.
A little bit of grass clippings off the sidewalk in the street, that's not an issue. But when they're blowing all the grass onto the sidewalk from the entire yard and then the entire yard into the street, absolutely that's when we'll start doing our enforcement. With the landscape companies, it's actually fairly easy because we contact the property and then go, hey, this isn't allowed. Well, I didn't do it. I hired a landscape company. Well, great. Who is that? And then we're able to get them. This actually happens a lot more in the fall with leaves. A lot of people in the city do not like picking up leaves for some reason. And so it's actually very easy to drive around or get those complaints as long as it's not a super windy day and of the house that has all the leaves, had a perfectly clean yard and all the leaves are in the street. And again, it's very easy to figure out where those came from. And most of the time, the landscape companies amazingly pick up leaves. They don't just blow them in the street, but residences of properties will blow the leaves into the street. And so that's remedied a lot of the times by a conversation. Very few times do we have to go to enforcement because it's, hey, just clean it up. A lot of the times, a lot of residences will get complaints on it, but what a lot of people do is actually blow the leaves into the street and then they blow them back into the gutter and use the gutter as a stop to actually clean it up. We see that probably 50% of the time, and we'll go out and all the leaves are blown within like a 2-foot wide windrow in the gutter, and they're out there with a shovel throwing it into a trash can. So stuff like that will absolutely allow. I think it's actually one of the exceptions in the 1573E of actively like picking it up and throwing it away. So as long as they're cleaning it up, it is in this general regulation section. This is also applied to construction sites, to commercial sites, to businesses, to places where they are blowing out parking lots or larger properties, especially construction sites with dirt lots, where they'll get just backpack blowers and blow all the trash. So you bring up dust, rocks, any of the other small construction trash that you don't want to just bend over and pick up. We had one not long ago in a residential area that was a new build, and when the contractors got the bright idea just to take a backpack blower and blow everything out into the street. Well, that's not acceptable, but that's covered under this section for just the general trash from his or her building, sidewalk, or driveway. And so that's why it's in this section, because it is the general provisions. We mainly deal with the grass clippings and leaves, but occasionally we will deal with just the general trash of someone just blowing it out of mine because it's blown in. I'm blowing it out for someone else to deal with. Unfortunately, we're just not passing that on to the next person.
I had a question about C under there, and it's the word tree. No person shall affix any poster, yada, yada, to any public post. There's a comma missing, by the way, there. Public utility post, control device, tree. The tree, is it on public property or is it on private property? Can I put anything on my tree?
So for the tree would be on public or private.
So I can't post anything on a tree in my yard.
So if it's on your yard, yes, but you're also not trespassing. So there's a caveat to that. If you have someone who comes on your property and posts it on your tree,
Right.
well, they're trespassing is violation 1, but now violation 2, they've actually damaged your tree by affixing something to it.
Okay.
So that's a second violation. So I believe that was the intent. I wasn't around when they made the law, but it's just labeled as tree because yes, you can't do it to city-owned tree, but you can't do it to anyone else's tree. But you can do it to your own tree because you're not trespassing.
Okay. I mean, that was my first thought is why are you telling me I can't put a sign about my lemonade stand on my tree?
The garage sale.
Are you paying taxes on your lemonade?
Yeah.
Sounds like a business license.
That's right. Any other thing in 1571? Any questions? I thought it was pretty clear. Okay, let's go on to 1572, residential district regulations. 2 of those. Storing junk or conduct or permit salvage or storage operations or facilities in any residentially zoned areas.
I think you've got an issue with what is the definition of junk?
It actually is defined.
Is it
Going
defined?
back to
I
the-
didn't
Go
know.
back.
junk, if it is defined, I didn't
Junk,
take a
yeah, it's about 6 lines long. I'm fairly threw it out there.
It is.
I won't read it
Okay,
all because
that's
it'll
all right.
take the rest of our time, but it is fairly extensive there. I had to ask that question too. Can you do this in your backyard if it's not in a viewable from the right of way?
So for section A, if it's not viewable, then we wouldn't be able to inspect unless you have a neighbor that has free and clear vision that's not violating any search and seizure or any constitutional rights of the property. So we're not going into a bathroom window or climbing on a roof to see it.
Okay.
Section B, it's a little bit different because now we're talking about salvage storage operations, which we would coordinate with the zoning portion of it in Title 16 as well. So that based on activity on the property for any junk or salvage operation may also have a caveat in the Title 16 portion for what you have operationally going on. So it would span the Title 15 and Title 16.
Okay. All right. But if I can hide my junk in the backyard, it's okay, and nobody sees it?
If no one can see it, is there a violation? That includes neighbors or anything else.
What if there's rodents and things like that?
No, that's different.
It's true.
Okay.
A lot of
Mouse
webs.
poop.
Any other questions on 15.7.2? Moving on, 15.7.3, placement and removal of trash. Yay. It surprised me that we're required to have trash service.
To have what?
That we're required to have trash service. And it's required every week that we have service come pick up our trash.
I think most cities, I think, are doing that.
What if you went in with a neighbor and the neighbor had trash service and you don't? Because
Well, then
neither
you
of
have trash service.
What's that?
If you're going in with a neighbor, you have trash service.
No, that's their trash service. They've just agreed to take on your own trash because you don't have
You're
enough.
just working together as one. I've done that with my neighbor, but at
But
times.
it says here that you shall subscribe to a trash removal service.
Do they keep track of that?
Yeah, that's another question. How do they keep track?
Not until you do single hauler.
But there's no dumps anymore that you can just drop things off, because when I was a kid, we always would go to the dump once a week.
They used to have incinerators
County
besides the
line
houses
and
in our
Colorado
neighborhood.
Boulevard.
we did too.
Load up the back of the car or the pickup truck and we
Can't
just
you
go
take it
out
out
there
of
and
management?
pay a small fee and it's cheaper than the garbage man.
I was just surprised that you are required to have a subscription for trash.
Well, otherwise
Trash, water,
people-
sewer, just, I feel
Right.
like a combo
If-
that is.
It becomes a problem.
Right, if you're not hauling it away, then you're storing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the vermin
I
And the
hear that.
bugs.
I just,
and the
there's
wind.
something libertarian in me that says that's not right.
Just make sure your trash is gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what
And then nobody
make
cares.
sure your trash is dealt with on a weekly basis
Yeah.
is a better way of describing it to me, but anyway.
But where else do you, yeah.
You could bury
You
it.
can't enforce 15.7.3 at all if you were
Right in
to
your
remove
neighbor's
that requirement.
What's that?
Then we'd have a real
That go over
problem.
well.
Well, if we had a single carrier, then you could just lump it onto the bill with the water and everything else, and it'd be all
No.
one thing.
But
You
nobody
couldn't
wants
share
it
with
to
your
be a
neighbor if you
single
go to a
carrier.
single hauler.
You
You
what?
didn't get
You
any
couldn't share
bids.
with your
No, you
neighbor if you
could.
go to
Yeah.
a single
Yeah.
hauler.
And I like my trash company.
Nobody wanted to do it.
They bring my
Single
trash can
carrier.
back to my
Why don't you do it?
street. Oh.
I just have old people in my neighborhood sneaking everything into the park trash.
Oh, yes.
Doing what?
Sneaking everything into the park trash.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, all the time.
Oh, there's dumpsters other places too.
Yeah, but
That's why people lock,
So they
businesses
don't-
lock their dumpsters.
They don't use their own,
Or they don't have it, I don't know, but
It's
I
almost
see it, and it's
unenforceable.
usually old men and stuff, so I'm not gonna bother them.
It's almost unenforceable to do that. But anyway, okay. I have no other questions for that
Better than
section.
an alley jump.
Anybody else want to have more trash talk? Moving on, 1574, outdoor storage of personal property.
I didn't have any issues with them.
What constitutes personal property?
Is there a definition of that?
1611.
I know one time I got in trouble for having a baby stroller on my front porch.
Have you gotten a notice of violation?
I did, I did. I had to put
For
my-
having a baby stroller?
Yep.
That's an exception.
Oh, it wasn't then. That was like,
It's an exception now.
well, 28 years ago it wasn't.
And they enforced it back then, right?
Yeah, they did.
I think I had a question.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
If you're thinking of yours. On section 3 where it does talk about bicycles and similar vehicles not powered by a motor bicycle. There's a lot of things going the way of like your electric bike having a motor. Again, just thinking broadly about having the code, the definitions, the things reflect the community as it is in 2025 versus whenever it was written. So that was one that just stood out to me as, I know what we're trying to say there, but bicycles are getting electrified. They're just different now.
But those are pretty expensive, so you wouldn't want to store it in your front yard. would you?
I mean, I
It would
would.
disappear.
They catch on fire.
Someone
wouldn't.
might want to. I don't think anyone's enforcing it, but I think just again, as where certain things that just stand out as a thing to keep an eye on. Or,
And with that, most things with the motor have other rules and regulations, either inoperable vehicles or anything like that, or required to be registered. Even low-powered scooters under 49 cc's technically still have to be registered. They're registered for 3 or 5 years. So there's different requirements. There's talks even now that e-bikes are going to be have to be registered. If you're under 16, you may not even be allowed to ride them with how many injuries they've had recently.
Oh, good.
E-bikes are required to be registered?
There's talks about some of those laws
Oh.
changing, specifically around age requirements because of the injuries and number of kids that have been injured on them and the speeds they go. So the biggest thing with why it's not powered by a motor is we're talking about kids' toys. We're talking about the bikes, we're talking about the trikes, just the regular kids' toys that are the outdoor stuff. That's not outdoor storage, that's allowed. So strollers, that's allowed.
I had a and this isn't a question, it's kind of an odd thing to see. Under 1574B, there appears to be a definition. And it would seem that the definition should belong in the definitions section. Definition says responsible party, the owner of the personal property as well as an occupant and owner of the property where such personal property is stored shall be responsible for the maintenance of such property in compliance with this chapter. And is there reference to the term responsible party somewhere else in here that this would be clarifying? I didn't see anything.
So in Title 15 in general, responsible party refers to the owner of the property. In this section, because it's talking about actual property, especially for rental properties, that property may not belong to the owner, and so the responsibility would lie also with the occupant. And so that's where the differences of responsible party of who we would actually enforce upon. The owner may not fully be responsible, so it would be the owner and the occupant are actually responsible instead of full responsibility going back to the owner.
Okay.
Because we're talking about personal items.
It doesn't seem like it's a ordinance. I mean, that particular B is not in something enforceable, I guess, is where I was going with it. It's not like, you shall not do this, you shall do. It's just a definition?
It's referring back to, for the notice process, for the notice of violation, the posting notice,
Okay,
for a service of the responsible party. That definition is in those sections of basically who gets the notice, the posting, the summons, who's ultimately responsible. So
okay,
this is clarifying for this one section,
okay,
that both can technically be held liable for it, not just the owner of the property, where the other sections, if it is grass or if it is a general nuisance or one of those, it always comes back to the owner of the property. But because this is talking about personal items, small personal items most of the time, it can also be the tenant or the occupant of the
okay. And I had the same question about 2 up at the top. But basically, it looks like personal property is the definition, and it should belong in the definition section.
Yes, this is incorporating other areas that aren't necessarily, so, camper toppers, building materials, landscape materials, machinery is referred to in other sections as well. And the definitions may have a little different meaning in other sections. So for the personal property, for this specific code, it's referring that these are included as well for the personal property. Where in some of the other code, like for some of the exceptions, for H, building materials may be used for construction of structures or facilities on the same lots, may be stored for a period not to exceed 90 days. There are other sections where building materials are excluded
Okay.
outright. So not just saying that building materials are included in this section as well.
Okay, thank you. Leo?
I just have a question on the section D, lawn furniture, including but not limited to. We've got some neighbors down the street that have children that have playhouses out in the front yard. That's not necessarily captured in here. Is that just kind of a given that that's okay?
Yes, it's actually been established by our court, and the guidance through past cases and court history, with specifically that D section. What it is basically if it's made for being outdoors, it's allowed to be outdoors. So
It
if
could
you
be
take
considered a household good.
yeah, so if it's meant to be inside, it's meant to be inside. If it's allowed to be outside, so a couch is a great example where someone will put a couch on their front patio.
Yeah.
If you notice any couch or I would say lawn furniture, on the tag it'll say for outdoor use. It'll note it specifically for outdoor use. If it has that, it's not a violation because it's considered lawn furniture for outdoor use. But if they're taking inside couch for outside on their patio, that would be a violation because it's not lawn furniture.
Okay.
So same thing for the kids' houses. We can't do every exception in there, but the general understanding from the court, past court cases for our direction is that if it's designed and meant to be used outdoors, it's not a violation. If it's designed and meant to be used indoors and what it was built for, but it's being used outdoors, that's a violation. Because it's not meant to stand up to the weather and that. And the harborage. The indoor materials are going to be destroyed and pulled apart a lot easier by the rodents, the animals, than the outdoor furniture because they're made out of different materials.
I was just thinking of like the Barbie kitchen that's set up in the front yard for the little girls, for like the month of June, and then it goes back inside.
Absolutely, and yeah, those are case by case, and a lot of those little tykes and stuff. They'll actually say on them indoor, outdoor.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I think this is what we planned on getting covered tonight, so I don't want to belabor it any longer. Thank you very, very much. Moving on in the agenda then. Any new business anybody wants to bring up or anything that you'd like to have on the agenda for next month?
I think we have a lot.
If we have a lot?
No, we have a lot.
Oh, we
going
have a
on.
lot.
We have a lot to work on.
We do, we do. I've made sure we stay busy.
Yes, thank you.
When do we start talking about snow? The dog days of summer over.
There you go. Have we addressed snow yet? Did we address snow? I can't remember.
I'm sure we have gone through it.
But I think we did, didn't we? Committee members' choice, anything anybody else wants to bring up?
I have a couple of questions. Is it true that we are doing mail postings on notice of violations?
On some of the properties, if they are vacant, or if it's a rental property where it doesn't appear anyone's there. But most of the seasonal ones especially are being placed on the properties. Businesses, most of the time it's doing both. It's getting posted and mailed just to make sure both are getting covered. But most of them are getting, from my understanding, are getting actually posted to the properties.
And so on the mailing ones, are you sending it certified mail?
For the initial one, they aren't being sent certified. If they are in violation on the second round, then they are being sent certified.
Okay, so we wouldn't abate a nuisance based on just a mailed, I mean, ones that's not mailed certified.
Correct. Yeah, if it was just mailed and no other contact was made, there has to be some other, it would have to be posted on the property, or it would have to be sent certified, or there has to be some contact. So if it was mailed, but the owner called in,
Okay,
and we talked to the owner, then we've made direct contact, so there is no need for certified at that point.
okay. And then, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, you might. The emergency action that was taken on Walgreens, was Walgreens noticed, did Walgreens consent to some form of abatement? Or did we abate Walgreens at all? Because of like the graffiti and other stuff that's going on there?
The old Walgreens,
On Dartmouth and Broadway.
I know it was abated, I think once early spring. The property, the last round of graffiti, the property owner's local manager abated themselves, they took care of. And I believe there was a couple of weeks ago, some trash that was in front of the property. There was a deadline given, and I'm not sure if that ended up being cleaned up by the local property manager or if that was actually abated. I haven't heard if that was cleaned up prior to abatement or if that was actually abated.
And, okay, so is the graffiti still on the Broadway side of the building? I mean, they put that fence around it, but you could see the graffiti over the top of the.
Majority of the graffiti's gone. I believe there is still a little bit on the building behind the fence. But otherwise, all the visible graffiti from the fence and that has been removed.
And then the house on Logan, the city's abating that too, correct? One across from the high school.
That's in the notice process.
Okay.
And
So
I do know that's the building department is working on that one. And I do know there has been some conversation with the family member of the owner recently. But there has been notices sent out for abatement of that property.
Okay.
For what? For what?
For cleanup of the property.
General cleanup, okay.
It kind of is cleaner than it used to be, but, okay. So and the one other question, I think I've asked this before, and I don't know if I got the answer to this, about animal forfeiture, how many dogs, lost dogs, and then how many people haven't come to claim them? Does that happen still, or does it happen?
Yes, for the ones that were unable to pay, was that the?
Yes.
Yeah, so for 2024, it must have been the night you weren't here, I think we presented that.
Okay.
But for 2024, there was no one that was not able to reclaim their dog because of the cost.
Okay.
And then from the shelter side, all the dogs that owners came forward that wanted to reclaim were able to reclaim. Of course, there are some owners that said, no, we don't want it back, and so they didn't take them. But everyone that wanted to reclaim an animal, without court issues or anything else, were able to work out some agreement with the shelter to reclaim an animal.
Okay, so it was, do we know if any of them didn't pick up the dog because they couldn't afford the fees?
From the city fee, from the 256, no.
Okay,
Everyone who was charged that fee and paid the fee was able to reclaim. There wasn't anyone that was not able to pay the fee and lost their animal because of that, per our court.
okay.
How much is the fee again?
256 or, yeah, I think 256. I have to go back and look, but 256 or 265, something like that.
256.
Yeah, I think it is too.
You know, I just don't see a lot of animals running around in Englewood, or free animals, or I just don't see them.
We do a pretty good job.
Huh?
We do a
Yeah,
pretty good job. We have good residences that help, so.
right, you know, I just,
Yeah, you know,
Next door is super helpful when dogs get out, so that's
That is true.
a platform
yeah.
for people to reunite animals.
oh, yeah,
Yeah, that's
Great.
really helpful.
and so sometimes does it happen mostly around the dog parks where a dog takes off or something?
yeah.
Most times in the neighborhoods.
Okay.
During the weekdays,
Store
when
gets
animals
left
get out.
open, lets the dog out.
Landscapers, mowing companies, high wind events, we know we're gonna have lots of dogs out, gates get blown open, those type of situations.
All right, thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other, anybody else have any other comments? I do have one comment. Rick doesn't know this, but I'm not gonna be here next month. So, it's all yours, buddy. Yeah, I have,
What do we want to assign to Rick?
planned vacation.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Just nail me with whatever you want.
Enjoy your vacation.
Yeah.
Have a good
yeah,
time.
We are looking forward to it. And that's it. I have nothing else. Anybody else have anything else? Okay, thank you very much, everybody, everything that was done tonight.
Great.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Where are you going on vacation?
We're gonna take our little camper.
Oh, good.